This video is for the dreamers, the doers, people that feel a calling to a life that is extraordinary, the people that are restless with their life and feel they can be doing better, that there's a better way to use this one precious life. I had that feeling, and I have something to say to you about it from my experience. I've been thinking a lot lately about Joseph Campbell's monomyth and the hero's journey. As a writer in Hollywood, everyone brings up Joseph Campbell to you. People like George Lucas have credited his work for helping with Star Wars. And basically, it's the template for a lot of Hollywood movies. And this video isn't about whether or not it's the only story or way to create a story. I'm not saying that it is, but it's very clear that it is a prevalent way to tell a story. I want to talk about what that means for us as people that are struggling to make their dreams come true, struggling to build a life that they've always wanted. Because there's something buried in the myth that I think is very relevant for all of us, for you, hopefully. If you're not familiar with Joseph Campbell's work, basically in the 1940s, I believe it was, I think the book was released in 1949. He did this huge study of all the mythology in all the cultures around the world over time. So across physical locations and across times, moments in times and eras. And he found that there was this one, he coined it the monomyth, the idea that all mythology sort of really is one myth in many different forms. And all the mythology of the world sort of comes back to this one myth. And this one myth has a very set structure to its story. And I think we're all familiar from watching movies what that is, whether we know it or not. But the idea is that you have this hero, it's also called the hero's journey. So whenever you hear someone talk about hero's journey, they're talking about Joseph Campbell's work in the monomyth. But the hero's journey is you have this person living this ordinary life, and suddenly something happens. And then they have this call to adventure. There's a choice. They can stay with their ordinary life, or they can go on this adventure. And of course, because they're a hero, they choose to go on the adventure. But the adventure is, usually it starts out decently well, and then they hit some snags, and then they hit more snags. And basically, in the end of Act 2, something impossibly bad has happened to our hero, and they're at a tipping point, right? And there's a decision whether or not to press on or to give up, And again, because they're a hero, they press on. And it's at this point where they start to turn things around. And it's from this low that they then go on to become the hero that, saves the world. What is interesting to me about this is how it has to be a metaphor for our lives, because the only way that I can explain it existing in all cultures across the world is if there's something very human about it, right? It just speaks to us at this level that predates even our own thinking, And so, and again, why is it that we love this story? Why is it that cultures around the world, over like all eras of time, with very different levels of technology and access to information, like feel something when they hear this story? And I think that's because it's the story that we all, if we choose to, go on to have our best life, right? And the reason I bring that up is like, for me, I'm definitely like in the point of the journey where I'm in the shit. You know what I mean? Like none of you have, you haven't seen my films yet. You don't know who I am. I'm like very much in the shit. But I've been thinking a lot about the idea that how close am I to the end? You know what I mean? Like, first of all, it's very clear from the hero's journey that adversity is necessary. Like, and adversity is built into the story. Like, you don't become the hero. Like, why do we respect heroes? Why do we respect what makes someone heroic? What it is pressing on against all odds, right? Think of your favorite movie. If you love like think about like the Avengers or something, right? Where it's like, there comes this point when all looks lost and there's no hope and there's no reason to continue to go forward, but they do. And then things turn around, and that is what makes them heroes, And so I think about that for you, for me, for, any of us that are out here, trying to build our dream, is that this adversity that you and I are facing is actually built into the story. It's like a necessary ingredient. It's not even avoidable. You cannot avoid it. It's necessary to the story. It's necessary to our growth, the growth that makes us into the heroes of our own lives, of our own journeys, you know? And so if you're like me, and you're feeling like just, things haven't gone the way you wanted, or you've encountered these challenges that you never imagined experiencing, I urge you to reframe it as like, oh, we're just on the journey, right? And maybe we're close to that turning point, right? Where suddenly things come around. Because the other thing in life is, I think we focus on the idea that we don't see bad things coming, but we forget that we also don't see the good things coming. If you think about some of the best moments in your life, like the day you met your best friend, the day you met your partner, the day before, you had no idea who they were. You had no idea that was going to happen to you, but it did. And now your life is forever better for it. And again, we forget that these good moments in our life don't we don't see them coming, and we have to remind ourselves to realize that this adversity is necessary for the journey. It's what is going to turn you into the hero of your own life, is the fact that you faced it and you pressed on. You didn't give up. That is again the only thing that makes all successful people alike, is that they didn't give up. And then everything else is mosquito. Everyone's on a unique journey. No two heroes' journeys are going to look alike, because no two people are alike. And so there's going to be no frame of reference for what you're going through, because you're the only person that can go through it the way that you can. And you don't know when it's going to end, and you don't know when things are going to turn around. You just got to keep going. I find it actually very heartening, this monomyth. Again, I'm not saying that this is the only myth. In fact, I wouldn't subscribe to the school that thinks this is the only story, but it's certainly a prevalent story. And I think it's a prevalent story because it speaks to the human experience and the human condition. And again, I find that very heartening, the idea that this journey is almost like coded into the universe, right? And I also think about, if you're familiar with Nietzsche's work and the will to power, and Nietzsche talks about how we should be grateful for the struggle, because the struggle is what gives our lives meaning. And I think there's also, crossover in that idea. And again, the reason these theories, I think, resonate or exist is just because there is some truth in them. And so wherever you are in your journey, if you're in act 2, where things are getting bad, or if things are looking dark, or bleak, know that it's like you're on the journey, and who knows when those things are going to flip around, because again, you never see the good coming either. So it could be tomorrow, it could be a week from now. It doesn't really matter, because it's going to happen. That's also encoded in the story, so, well, I'm going to enjoy my last little bit of the Redwoods here, and I'll talk to you later.